Thank you so much for joining us for this brief overview of the components that make up a comprehensive curriculum. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Defining what is meant by a comprehensive curriculum is a good place for us to start. A comprehensive ESOL curriculum contextualizes language development in relevant, inclusive, and culturally responsive content. It outlines the knowledge and the skills that students are supposed to learn at each level. The curriculum is a program-wide initiative. To be effective and comprehensive, the curriculum must align with the standards and benchmarks of the Mass English Language Proficiency Standards. And finally, an ESOL curriculum should reflect principles of second language acquisition. Curriculum and instruction should be relevant to learners' lives, their goals, needs, interests, and cultural identities. It should provide communicative activities to maximize student interaction and engagement. It should challenge learners without overwhelming them, ensuring their success and progress, which all learners need to stay motivated. It should include differentiation and scaffolding to meet the diverse needs of learners, and include assessment, formative throughout the lesson, summative at the end, as well as student self-assessments. A comprehensive curriculum includes 3 essential components: scope and sequence, unit plans, and lesson plans. How do all of these fit together, you might ask? Well, let's take a look here. First, you have the scope and sequence. The scope and sequence is a thorough outline for each level across learning cycle. That can be a semester, trimester, year, however your program divides up their learning cycles. Importantly, the scope and sequence includes an outline of each unit. The unit plan is sketched out loosely in the scope and sequence, but teased apart in the unit plan section itself to include necessary details on which to build your lessons. Lessons make up each unit and get down to the granular level of your instruction to include details for how a class within a unit will progress from beginning to end. Now that we have clearly identified the 3 essential elements to create a comprehensive curriculum, let's examine each more closely. We'll start with the scope and sequence. The scope and sequence spells out in broad strokes what is covered and in what order at each class level. The scope and sequence provides the big picture view of the curriculum, the foundation upon which the other pieces are built. The scope lays out the depth and breadth of content and skills to be covered. And the sequence provides the order in which those tools and content will be taught over time. A scope and sequence provides information in 2 directions, horizontally and vertically. Horizontally by level, it shows the progression of content, knowledge, and language skills as learners move through that level. And vertically across levels, it shows the progression and transition from one level to the next. The Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and SABES developed templates for programs to use to create a scope and sequence. Here you will find the definitions and the intentions of the scope and sequence template laid out for you. As you continue to review the template, you will find that it shows the necessary components of an ESOL scope and sequence. So let's take a look at it now. On the template itself, you will find each of the following elements for each unit. The title should contextualize language learning around a topic that is relevant to adults. The time is the estimated number of hours and weeks needed to complete the unit. The unit goal and rationale is a broad statement of what students will learn from the unit and why it is important. Unit outcomes and culminating assessment describe what students will do to demonstrate their learning. For example, through what culminating product, project, or task will they demonstrate that they have met the unit goal. Priority, Mass ELP standards, and benchmarks. These are the 3 to 5 priority Mass ELP standards and benchmarks that align to the unit goal and will be explicitly taught and assessed in the unit. And finally, the instructional resources and materials, which include a variety of authentic, diverse, rigorous materials that students will read, listen to, and watch, including digital resources. Now that the scope and sequence has been developed, you can move on to refining it further by creating your unit plans. With unit plans, we zoom in from the big picture provided in the scope and sequence to a more detailed level. The unit plan is not as specific as a lesson plan, but definitely refined more so than the scope and sequence. The unit plan includes contextualized language, skills, and relevant content areas. Rigorous learning objectives for both content and language. It includes alignment with priority benchmarks from the Mass ELPs and tools to measure progress and assess the extent of student learning. It provides an outline of sequenced lessons, a variety of resources that reflect the diversity of the learners, and cohesive alignment of all of the above components. DESE and SABES also created a unit plan template to help ESOL practitioners. The unit plan template has two parts. Part 1, seen here, includes the same exact information from the scope and sequence unit sketch that can simply be copied and pasted into the template. Part 2 includes more details. As we begin the unit plan details, you will start with the essential questions, which are open-ended, thought-provoking questions that help students to connect and engage intellectually with the unit. Then there are the unit objectives, which should include both language and content that align to the unit goal and standards from Part 1. The unit plan also describes how the objectives will be assessed. That is, how students will demonstrate that they have learned the objectives through what activity or task, and how teachers and students will measure the extent of the learning, for example, through a rubric or a checklist. An ESOL unit plan also includes a list of key vocabulary and grammar targeted in the unit. Teachers will add to this list when writing their more detailed lesson plans. In the template, you will find a reminder to review the unit plan through different lenses to make sure these examples have been addressed. These lenses are contextualization, culturally responsive teaching practices, differentiation, digital literacy, and technology. And finally, the unit plan includes a suggested sequence of learning. This is a list of the focus of each lesson that progressed toward the unit goal. The sequence is just that. The lessons themselves will be fully developed as the lesson plans are created by teachers. Now you have your scope and sequence developed and have broken this down into distinct unit plans. Now it's time for your lesson plans. A lesson plan is the most detailed component of the curriculum and reflects the incremental steps needed to achieve the goal and outcome. Lesson plans are also the least prescribed and most flexible components of a curriculum. They include individual designs for 1 or 2 class sessions of a unit. It provides detail for how a class will progress from beginning to end, and are tailored to address the needs of a particular student at a particular time. The DESE SABES template for lesson plans includes these components: the lesson's content and language objectives, evidence of learning, also known as the assessment, learning target statements. These are essentially the objectives from the student's perspective. The Mass ELPS benchmarks that align with the lesson's objectives more than the priority ones identified in the unit plan. Additional targeted vocabulary and grammar, and then the learning plan. The learning plan describes step by step what the teacher and what the students will be doing through the lesson. It includes an introduction or warm-up, the body of the lesson, and the wrap-up. It guides the teachers in gradually releasing responsibility of learning from the teacher to the students. And we explore each of these elements of a lesson plan throughout the course on lesson planning using backward design. There are 3 main components to a curriculum: the scope and sequence, which is the broad outline for each level across a learning cycle; The unit plan, which is sketched out in the scope and sequence, which is then expanded to include more details. And the lesson plans, which make up the unit and include even more details not found in the unit plan, such as specific activities and differentiation for students. When these three components have been thoughtfully developed, aligned to standards, and adopted program-wide, you have successfully developed a comprehensive curriculum. Thank you so much for joining us.